Two nights ago, another attack by the disease-ridden Carnotaurus was initiated, the newswoman said as she sat before the camera. Demolishing the home of the Mitchell family in Toronto, Canada, the Mitchell children, Zach and Gray, along with one Jan Pfeiffer, were evidently unharmed. Government specialists have given the indication that all three children were able to escape the attack, as there were no signs of mutilation. Owen sat in his cabin as he watched the report on his television. He remembered the two boys on the screen very well. Those two were with his old flame Claire, back when Jurassic World was brought to its knees. All the creatures let loose by a devil created in a lab. He rose from his chair and walked out his door. He looked down into the pitch blackness of the night. The stars illuminated the skies above his head. The colors that the sunset had painted onto the sky had been gone for some time. An orchestra of crickets filled the air. The wildlife around his cabin were most likely minding their own business out there in the nighttime world. He knew that there were some dinosaurs out there in his woods, as he had to build a fence to keep some of them out of his garden. The Microceratops were a rather pesky species to have around, and yet having dinosaurs around made him feel like he was back in the island. All the memories he had of that place had been pushed back into the tightest vaults of his mind, locked away and casting the key inside. He could well remember the lost relationship he had with Claire on that wretched train wreck of a theme park. Most of all, he remembered the 4 raptors he had raised since hatching: Charlie, Echo, Delta, Blue. Wherever Blue was at this time, he had hoped she was safe. Being the last raptor in existence, she was among the most rare species on the planet. It would be a hard world for her out there, even during the times of the first park. Their kind was not given a very good reputation. These animals were more intelligent than even he gave them credit for. Not a day went by that he did not miss them. Blue and her sisters were the closest thing he had ever had to children. If everyone to say that he held them in just about the same regard as those people in the lab, they would be lying to themselves and to others. Owen sighed as he walked around his cabin, his hands in his pockets as he began to think to himself. He felt the night air surround him as his thoughts flew around like pterosaurs in the old aviary. He knew how they did it for a fact, as he watched them fly around in there himself. The connection he had with that raptor was stronger than any weapon he had ever faced during his time in the army. He felt his heart ache when recalling the times long lost. How he wished he could have done more for her. But now, he could do nothing for her. He could not find her. He could not help her. All that he truly could do for her was hope that wherever she was safe. And also, what the heck was that? The sound seemed to come from the other side of his cabin. Now, Owen was not exactly the kind of person who could jump to conclusions, but he felt absolutely certain that it was those little pests, the microbes. They must have been trying to steal his crops again. He found his shovel resting by the side of the back porch. Those little critters feared him more than they loved his vegetables. He began to silently walk towards the location of the sound, shovel in hand to get the drop on them. I swear, he thought, these things are just like compies. And that was the truth to him. He would know he had problems with both. As he rounded the corner, he prepared to chase off the small creatures. But what he saw was the last thing he expected to see. Whoa! Barry yelled as Owen nearly swatted him with a shovel. Owen closed his eyes and breathed. Barry, I swear to gosh, you almost scared me dead. What are you doing here? Good to see you too, Owen. Barry took the shovel from him and put it aside. We do not have much time. I'm sorry, Barry motioned for Owen to follow him back to his motorcycle. Once there, Owen saw what he was talking about. The two boys before him were familiar faces from when the park fell, and the girl groaning in pain in the sidecar was a stranger to him. He could see her arm was bleeding and heavily damaged. "Owen?" Zack and Gray said in unison. Owen was surprised to see them here at his home, but what surprised him the most was when Barry ducked him down before pushing the motorcycle somewhere out of sight. "Barry, what are you—" "Shh," Barry whispered. There was something in the distance, some kind of revving sound racing through the brush a great distance before them. Owen and the others could see lights ahead coming towards them. Twigs were snapping and creaking as whatever they were came closer through the woods. The unknown vehicles soon came better in view. There were 2 jeeps and at least 5 motorcycles. The men who rode them wore uniforms and helmets of light green. On the side of each of the vehicles there was some sort of symbol. In the darkness of the night, Owen could make out what it was thanks to the headlights on the transportation. It looked like a picture of a globe, inside of it being a letter B. At the time he spent living with and working with InGen, he had never seen this strange sign in any shape or form. The motorists drove through the woods at a fast pace, going past him and the others as they could not see them. Sure enough, the brightness of the headlights grew dimmer and dimmer until they finally disappeared from view. "Who are those guys?" Owen whispered. "The people behind the last attacks." Barry stood up and walked to Jen, including hers. Having given Jen some medicine for the venom, Owen treated Gray and Zack to his abode. He imagined they needed it after the events 2 days ago at their house. At the same time, he was just glad they all got out of there safely. "So, these guys are like InGen's evil clone?" Owen asked Barry as he sat in his chair. "Not exactly," Barry answered. "Biosyn has been trying to create their own dinosaurs for over 30 years. They were the ones who destroyed the first park. From what I've dug up, they tried to steal some of the viable embryos." Owen scoffed. "Surprised they didn't get shut down. They're more conspicuous than InGen," Barry continued. "Their technology has surpassed them so much they're virtually invisible." "So why would they be using dinosaurs to attack the world?" Owen asked. "My guess is the same," Barry said. "But apparently they were looking for us. That's why they were in your woods. They must have been tracking us since I saved the children. If we're to keep ahead of them, we have to keep under cover." "We?" Owen raised his eyebrow. "What? You're talking about me joining this little venture?" "Sorry, Barry, but if you haven't noticed already, I've had my own share of bad luck with InGen's little closet skeletons. You're on your own here." He then sat up and walked towards the door, placing his hands on his hips and staring right at it. "We need you, Owen," Barry sighed. "Look, I know what you're feeling. Believe me, I feel for Blue as well. But if we do not act now, we may regret it. Besides, this all concerns you as well. If they tracked you here, that means they'll be after you too. Please." It took a good long silence for Owen to think about this. Barry was his closest friend since even before Jurassic World was a thing. They both shared a fascination with velociraptors after hearing about the 1993 incident, and now since Barry needed him now more than ever, he felt as if he were going into uncharted territory. At this point, he was certain that was where he was about to go. Standing at the gates of death was no stranger to Owen. After feeling that vague emptiness inside of him for so long, fear was no different feeling to him. He had been afraid since he first found out about the Indominus Rex. Seeing people eaten alive, authority turning sour. He did not want the same thing to happen again. He was in. George Basildon stood outside the window as he listened to the conversation between his suspect and some unknown man. He did not have to look in there to know the teenagers were in there as well. He remembered Dockson's orders to him. No survivors. They must have slipped past them when they searched the woods. He could not understand how they survived their encounter with Khan. Nor did he care. He had orders to keep things under control. He pulled out his walkie-talkie and turned it on. "Bravo team, double back to the forest." "You were right. They escaped the Carno. My coordinates are just east of where we drove past." "I have found them."